Hello, my name is Joe Ko, and I wanted to talk a little in this video about starting to use provocative therapy and patterns from provocative therapy in working with clients. I'm intending this video primarily for people who are hypnotherapists, NLP practitioners, brief therapists, or psychotherapists of any kind, but also if you're just intrigued by provocative therapy, by the name and what it might involve, then feel free to tag along for the ride. Provocative therapy, if I could give thumbnail sketch, broad brushstroke overview of what it is, it's using warm-hearted humour to shine a light on the shadow, the secondary gain that can be contributing to a client's problem. It's about lampooning the client's thinking with exaggeration, by playing devil's advocate, sometimes using surreal imagery, but it externalizes the client's thinking so that they get a chance to see it from the outside, to see what they've been thinking. And I've had clients who I've done this kind of work with say, sometimes, Joe, it was like you were saying my innermost thoughts. Sometimes what you were saying was ridiculous, and sometimes what you were saying was exactly the kind of thing that I've been saying to myself. And so it's about allowing a client to, in a vivid, in a memorable way, not in a step-by-step bullet point list from an anthology 27 of NLP techniques. It's not about doing a technique on someone, it's about conversationally bringing out the factors, the aspects of how they've been thinking of themselves, the aspects of their self-concept, the generalizations they've been making about themselves and the world and about other people, and the perhaps hidden or semi-conscious motivations, the hidden benefits or secondary gain that's been contributing to their problem. You're bringing that out conversationally in a way that has a lightness of touch to it, in a way that has good-natured humour to it, so that it's this. Provocative does not mean Hulk smash, fists on the table, headbutting each other. We're going to confront this now. It's time. It's not confrontation therapy. It's there's often a lightness to it, and a playfulness, and a just coming at things in a slightly different way than you might do in a more straightforward, conventional, possibly more humorless change work session. Anyhow, there's a long conversation that could be had about the ins and outs of provocative therapy. This is the 1974 text by the creator of Provocative Therapy, Frank Farrelly, co-authored with Jeff Brandsma. This is an official unsigned copy. I saw Frank. I went to the last workshop that he was holding in the UK shortly before he passed away, and and this is very much thanks to Nick Kemp for prodding me and provoking me to actually come up to Leeds and see Frank, basically before it was too late. And thank goodness I did. I got to be a demonstration subject with Frank, so I got to experience what provocative therapy is like, being a client and doing it one-to-one with him, and as well as the abundance of warmth and wit that Frank Farrelly, and compassion, that he's famous for, or certainly famous within the circles that know exactly who Frank Farrelly is. I mean, what is it? The kindest, most warm-hearted man I've ever known, wrapped up in the biggest son of a bitch I've ever known, I think is how he was once described. One of the things I really noticed from being on stage with him was the ease and space that there was as well to talk the way that he took his time as well. Sometimes if you watch Frank work, or if you see provocative therapy in action, or if you try and do provocative therapy with people, there can sometimes be a sense of I'm trying to think of witty, funny ideas, which is the wrong approach. I mean, anyone who's done improv knows that's not the way to go about it. You don't improvise by thinking I'm going to try and be funny here. The humour of what happens in the conversation is something that flows very, very spontaneously. But Frank, I really noticed there was a sense of I felt at ease. I felt like there was all the time in the world, and maybe more than anything else I'm going to say in that video, that's the most important thing, that the energy, the attitude of the practitioner in any therapeutic relationship, the manner, the tone, in some circles they would say the space that you're creating, the energy you're creating, is the most important thing. And of course it's collaborative as well, it's with the client, but the tone and the manner that came through with Frank, as well as his warmth and support, and of calling me on my bullshit, and of using targeted, focused pieces of provocation to illuminate certain things that I was holding in my brain, that I was dealing with at the time. As well as all of that, there was a real sense of ease and a real sense of being set at my ease in sitting there with him. So there's a principle for doing provocative therapy. It really is okay to take your time. It really is okay to let there be a pause. And something Nick Kemp, who was mentored extensively by Frank and who created his own extension and development of provocative therapy, and which draws on all sorts of other principles as well, including aspects of hypnosis and using representational systems and metaphor work. There's a whole bunch of things that Nick's done in pulling patterns of provocative therapy and finding out how they can be put to use in different ways. But one of the things Nick always emphasizes about how Frank worked, and what any good, impactful communicator needs to learn, is variety. Frank had a tremendous vocal range, tremendous expressiveness, non-verbally, the way he'd create these vignettes, a little dramatic scene of a client communicating with their boss, playing this role or that role. It's all very, very memorable. It sticks in the brain because it brings things to life. You could think of provocative therapy as being a way of activating the client's own psychological immune system. You bring to life their generalizations, aspects of their self-concept, or whatever, their relationships with others, but by lampooning them, by allowing them to become exaggerated, surreal even. Here's one example. A client I worked with, and by the way, I've got a strong background in doing brief therapy and hypnotherapy that draws from the work of Milton Erickson. So you could call it Ericksonian or Neo-Ericksonian or whatever, but so brief solution-focused therapy, NLP, hypnotherapy have all been strong influences on me and on how I work with people through the years. And it's not that I've suddenly just devoted myself to being a provocative therapist and all I do now is provoke people. There's a strong foundation in how I work with people that is very aligned with the principles of solution-focused therapy, hypnotherapy and so on. So this guy came to see me a while ago for an upcoming really, really big sports event, athletic event that he was participating in. And it was a one-session deal, just not long before he was about to go off and do it. And he, in the time that we had to work together, most of it was going to need to be about him being in a peak state, him being in flow, doing mental rehearsal, practicing being on form, at his best, dealing with any unforeseen obstacles or challenges, and being able to relax with those and to flow with what happens and to keep going and to keep being at his best all throughout the event, which anyone with a similar background to me in terms of, you know, training in NLP or hypnosis, I think you'll have a general sense of the kind of work that I was intending to do with him, the kind of work I actually did do with him as well in doing peak performance sports coaching. But something he mentioned to me quite early on in the session was that he was feeling incredibly stressed about this kind of the run-up to the event, the training that he was doing. He felt like he was torn because he felt a tremendous amount of pressure in himself to be pleasing his sponsors, to be appeasing his sponsors, to be doing more, I guess, to promote their brands. But a lot of his, he felt guilty, essentially. He felt very, very pressured. And the reason I mention this now is I wonder to myself, before I knew provocative therapy, how much I would have been able to address that within a 90-minute session or a 2-hour session. I think I saw him for... I saw that was a 90-minute session I had with him. How much would I have been able to work with that without knowing any provocative patterns? Because I mean, what's the essence of what we're talking about there? It's over-eager people-pleasing. It's you know, there's more I would like to do for my sponsors. I feel guilty about it. I kind of feel like I'm their slave. I feel... Okay, of course there's ways of working with that sort of pattern that might come from NLP or hypnotherapy, but we only had one session, and I wasn't going to do some extended, long, closed-eye sequence all about dealing with the urge to be a people pleaser. And we're doing 6-step reframing on contacting the part of him that feels obliged to please his sponsors, and, you know, getting idiomotor finger signals, and when that part willing to reveal its positive intention. You know, there's loads of convoluted, clunky even ways of working with a pattern like that. And I could have also lightly touched on it by offering some reframes and talking in a more sort of straightforward way about, well, it's important to set boundaries, and it's important to recognize when you've fulfilled your obligations and what your priority is now, and the sort of conventional things that are essentially common sense that his friends and family and his other, you know, people training him would have very likely said something along those lines anyway. But instead it seemed, especially once he mentioned the word slave, it became so obvious that there's ways of working with that provocatively. By which I mean, and this is a provocative pattern that you can very easily segue into, even if you're not a full-on, you know, Captain Provocative Therapy. I'm going to do provocative therapy for 2 hours straight here. That's all I'm going to do. You know, that's a bit much. When Frank Faraday had a huge amount of experience, you know, a lifetime of working with clients to get to the skill level that he had. And if you're just starting out using these patterns, rather than launching in at the start of the session with one of the classic provocative therapy exercises is, what's wrong with that? So what's wrong with that? But the problem is if you launch into doing that right at the start of the session, oh, you've got a phobia, what's wrong with that? Nothing wrong with being afraid, nothing wrong. It's grating, it's jarring, it sets a tone that's not very useful. It sets an adversarial tone. And that's not what provocative therapy is about at all. But with this client, this was fairly early on in the session, I just started teasing him, therapeutically teasing him. The way I describe it, and the way I'm going to recommend you experiment with this, if you're interested in doing so, is to just look a little bit like you're pretending to be baffled. It's like it's feigned bafflement, feigned sort of quizzical. I'm just curious. I don't quite understand. I mean, what's wrong with really pleasing your sponsors? I mean, these people have given money to this, to support you, and some of them right now, they're going to have knots in their shoulders that they probably need a massage. And no, you're not doing it, are you? You're off doing your training for this event. That they've got neck tension, some of them, and you could be rushing. I mean, you'd hear talking to me. You could be rushing, getting the next train up to one of their offices. Get a taxi there, get some chocolates on the way, bring them flowers, and just get to work doing the neck massage, the shoulder massage that you've been depriving them of. And I mean, making sure it's thorough until they're properly relaxed, until they've got a smile on their face. And then make sure you've got your palm leaf. I mean, I assume you've got a supply of palm leaves, haven't you? You want to get one of those out and just fan them. And I mean, that's its own exercise, isn't it? That could be a different kind of training for you. If you're just standing in the corner, just fanning them, it would create a sense of harmony, would it not? It would be like the perfect solution, because they'd be happy, they'd be reclining back, all would be right in the world. And ultimately, you might find that all this sports athletics business, it's not for everyone. Some people, their destiny is different. Their destiny is to be more of a concierge, to just be on 24-hour call, to just make sure you... I was elaborating and going on quite an extended sequence with him and noticing his reactions. If he just looked at me in a stony way, like he was going to hit me, I would have adjusted what I was doing. This is you are relating. This is like any therapeutic work. There's an atmosphere. There's a context. There's a human relationship between the two of you. And in doing this all with a twinkle in my eye, with sort of quizzical bafflement of, I'm just curious. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with being a good, hard-working slave, chipping away, building the pyramids, building the roads in a slave gang. It's not for everyone sitting in their executive office chair. Some people, and all this sort of stardom and sports and athletics, it's just not for some people. Some people, that movement, it's something that they were making in a past life in ancient Rome, and now they're just doing it again. They've got the palm leaf, and it just feels like, aha, everything clicks. That's their destiny, to just be fanning someone in an office. He could be campaigning against the introduction of electric fans in offices. He says, we need jobs as people that waft palm leaves. We're going to fight for our jobs. So it starts to become pretty surreal. The whole direction that the session takes starts to become pretty surreal. But the reaction that it created in him was a really useful sense of both laughter and exasperation, and of externalizing the people-pleasing pattern, of him being able to see it from the outside with all of this ludicrous imagery, and it activated his psychological immune system, and he went, phew. I realise I've been my head's been too much in that space. My head's been too much involved in thinking about them. I actually really need to just set a boundary here, don't I? So, in other words, the common sense solution that people might have offered him as a piece of advice, he began to come up with himself congruently. Not just as I know I should set boundaries more. It's not about the should anymore. It's about a congruent, him passing through threshold, him saying, no, that's enough. That's enough, and I'm not a slave to them. I'm not this. That's just enough is enough, and that freed up a lot of energy within the session for us to go and for us to put all of our attention on the peak performance coaching aspect of it. But I was able to work that way with him within just a short, 20-minute section of the session. So learning provocative therapy, and I've done there was the workshop I did with Frank, and then I've done a lot of training with Nick Kemp in his Provocative Changeworks model. It's given me a lot more flexibility, and it's allowed me to bring more dynamic range, more expressiveness, more of myself into how I work with clients, which in turn has shifted the tone of the sessions I have with people. It's much more relaxed and humorous, and the client's more at ease with the whole process. There's less of that constrained, formalized artifice of a more mainstream conventional coaching therapy session, where everything's a little bit more clinical, a little bit more gently, softly. Even sometimes therapy can implicitly communicate that the other person is a china doll, that they just need to, the therapist has to be very, very cautious and just constrained and careful about what they say, and everything's very, very the meta communication being that the client is very delicate and fragile. Talking in that way to a client, you're doing them a disservice by yourself being relaxed, by yourself setting them at ease, by yourself using humour and bringing aspects and patterns that have been contributing to the client's issue into the conversation with a lightness of touch, with humour, lampooning the client's generalizations, exaggeration, all of these sorts of provocative patterns that I've been talking about. It frees up the session. And frees up the client to take things lightly and to contextualize things in a way that they might never have otherwise been able to do. And it creates a lot more dynamic energy as well for any further work that you do with them. There was another client I saw for fear of driving, and she had a good reason to be afraid of driving. She was, when she was with her driving instructor, in learning to drive, there was a big four-wheel drive Range Rover type vehicle that she had a standoff with, and her instructor was saying, "No, you're in the right here. It's okay. You stand your ground. He should move. It's all right. Everything's fine." And then this nutcase got out of the big Range Rover and started screaming and shouting and pounding on her window and dragging a key alongside the instructor's car. It makes sense that having been through an experience like that, you might be a little bit nervous about driving. She passed her test, but she just avoided driving after that. And I did various things with her, and this was actually just a one session thing, and she emailed me afterwards and said, this has made a big difference. I've been out driving again. Thank you so much. And I didn't just do provocative therapy with her, but I did some quite extended sequences, just saying, well, again, the feigned bafflement, feigned puzzlement. I said, let's call her Sarah. I just said, Sarah, I don't understand what's wrong with letting other people give you lifts. I mean, the best class of people over the generations, they weren't ones that liked to go in motor cars themselves. I mean, holding on to the grubby wheel of a motor car, of working on the engine and like a mechanic and getting all the grease and the oil under your fingernails. I mean, that's for a different class of people. The royalty, the elite, they were the ones who were driven around. The Queen occasionally deigns to drive a car a little bit herself in the safety of a big countryside estate. But the essence of royalty, the essence of being noble, of one of the nobles, is you just summon your chauffeur and you instruct your chauffeur where it is that you're going to be going. I mean, you could be there at the end of a party Other people are driving off in their little Ford Fiestas, and they're all, you know, smoky second-hand cars going off into the distance. You can just wait. You can just wait. Okay, I mean, sometimes your taxi or your chauffeur might be a little bit late, and you could be standing there in the rain, but you could know that you're one of those people that just prefers to be driven. It doesn't want. And she'd say, "Oh no!" She'd say, "No, no, 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 no! I don't want to be like that." And she said, "I've got an aunt who has never been able to drive, and I've seen my aunt just hanging around waiting for my uncle to pick her up after parties and things." She said, "I really, really don't want that." And I said, "Well, you know, perhaps your aunt has royal blood in her too. Perhaps she just knows. She has that sense, even when she's standing there in the rain, of there just being a crown." And she said, "No, no, I don't want to be like that." And that exasperation, it livens up the session. There's dynamic energy there. There's her moving through threshold. There's her, "No, I've absolutely had enough." "No, you sure? You sure you want to change this?" "Yeah, I'm really, really sure." All of that energy then gives any hypnotic work that you do, any task setting work that you do, any future rehearsal work that you do with the client, much more focused commitment, determination. They've got a sense of, yes, I'm bloody well going to do this, which is great. So it really is. It's very it makes such a huge difference compared to if you've ever had a client session that's a bit low energy, let's say, where the client's, "Well, I could try and do that. Oh, yeah, I'd quite like to," and you scale their motivation on a scale of 1 to 10. How motivated are you to do this? "Oh, about a 3 or a 4. All of that low energy, meandering, half committed, sort of slightly doubting, "I'm not sure if I could, I know I should do this, and people have told me I should do," all of that kind of low energy uncertainty doesn't tend to happen once you start working with people in a provocative way. They become quite gripped by, "Okay, that's exactly what I've been thinking, yes, yes." When you start to feed back maybe any of their wishy-washy or indecisiveness by humorously lampooning it, by creating a little vignette about what it's like to be just saying maybe, and to be rocking backwards and forwards in the breezes. There's some people in life that are just decisive, that just get on with things, and smash down the door in the morning like Popeye, and boom, and they're out getting on with their day. And there's other people, and they're just looking at their pink sock or slightly more light red sock, and then they look back at their pink sock. And sometimes it can take quite a long time to just think about which sock you're going to put on in the morning, because is it a pink? And these other people, they're out there, punching their way through deal after deal and bringing home the bacon and rah! And then there's other people, and about midday they think, "Okay, pink." And then you can ask the client, what would you, if you had to choose a sock, what would it be? Would it be pink or light red? They get impatient with you, but you're bringing out the indecisiveness, and you're turning it into a little humorous, surreal vignette, which allows them to see the pattern from the outside, and it's impactful. And it's a way of working with patterns like that in a way that I certainly didn't know how to before I learned provocative therapy and provocative change works. So, how much longer have I got left on this video to talk? Oh, we've nearly come up to the half-hour mark. Okay, if you'd like to experiment with provocative therapy, that's a way to do it. Feign bafflement at some point in the session and ask, "I'm just curious, what's wrong with that? So you're sure you want to change this? But what about da 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 da?" And you use humour and exaggeration, and just notice the response you get. You could just do that for 1 or 2 minutes, here and there with clients. Notice the response that you get. The more vivid you make it, the better. And that is the end of today's video. There will be more to come. Thank you for watching.